Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited to see you all hanging in there through this fun yet challenging project. I'd like to start off today by clarifying just a couple things that I think I could have explained better in our last video on setting up the off-grid wireless access point. Now, some people heard me say the words Wi-Fi or wireless and thought that means we need the internet to make this work, and that's not exactly the case. We'll need the internet now in order to download the communication software that we need, as we'll do today. But when all the setup is complete, you will no longer need the internet. This will still be an off-grid system. So to recap, last time we took this wireless USB adapter, we plugged it into our Raspberry Pi, and we used instructions on the techprepper.com in order to turn this into something that no longer accesses the internet wirelessly, but instead emits a hotspot that we can connect to with our cell phones or laptops and operate the computer headlessly using VNC software. In that video, I told you to set this up last on your Raspberry Pi 2 computers, and that's because there is no wireless access on the board. The Pi models 3 and 4 have wireless access, so even though we've set that up and this no longer accesses the internet, we'll still use the internet connectivity on the board in order to download the software, but the Pi 2 doesn't have that capability. So some clever people think, well, maybe you could just plug in a second USB adapter and access the internet that way. Well, that doesn't exactly work on a Raspberry Pi. So if you've already set up your off-grid wireless access point on a Pi 2, you'll need a wired Cat5 internet connection. Plug that in, and you'll be able to download the software. But otherwise, just do that last. Today we'll focus on downloading the communication software that we need and configuring our sound card. The sound card is simply an interface in between the computer and the radio, allowing them to talk to each other. The one that I'm using is called the Digirig. You can get that on Amazon or digirig.net. I like the Digirig because it's small, and the developer Dennis is very active on his support forum, but any sound card will do. If you like the Signal Link better, it'll work just fine. It's just going to look differently on your screen when you do the setup. Once you pick your sound card, you'll need some other cables to connect the computer to the radio. I have this one here that connects between the USB-C port of the sound card and then goes to our Raspberry Pi on the USB port. On the other end, you'll need a specific radio cable for your model of radio. This one here is for the ICV80, plugs in there. And on the other side, I've got a plug that goes into the Digirig. Additionally, for setup, we'll need our power source. I have here a cigarette lighter that outputs 5 volts, 3 amps, and a very short cable. We'll plug that in now. If you would like to connect this to an HDMI monitor on the Pi models 2 and 3, you do have a full-size HDMI port. However, on the Pi Model 4, you'll need that micro HDMI adapter. If you're not going to use that wireless access point, and you're just going to do the setup today on the HDMI monitor, you'll also need to plug in a USB keyboard and mouse. This is now ready to go. All right, we're going to go through that login process again. I'm going to show you here that I'm just connecting to this off-grid access point, and then we are no longer going to be on the internet. It's going to say no internet access, all right? Let's open our VNC software, in this case, Real VNC. Double-click Home, and we're going to be right in. Again, no internet required except for downloading the software. So the Pi up here is connected to my Wi-Fi in the house. But after we get all the software downloaded, it will no longer need to be on the internet. I hope that clears up any confusion for everybody. Okay, let's go back to our checklist here. We're going to scroll down, I believe, to number 3. Here we go. Okay, so we can configure our desktop. We can customize it a little bit to our liking. So we can go back in here, and for example, we can click on the taskbar here and change the panel's appearance. So I like the taskbar on the bottom. You might like it on the top. This is going to be largely up to your preference. Also, we can change this background to, I don't know, something fun like the Northern Lights. I hope everybody's outside checking out for those tonight. It's going to be spectacular if you don't live in North Idaho and the sky is covered with clouds. All right, I believe we can change our mouse cursor. I like to be medium. Makes it a little easier to see, and note that it's not going to change size until we reboot the computer. I think that's all we're going to need for now here, unless you want to change the text colors. But you can just have fun and play around with all that later. Now, another thing we can do, oh, I guess my taskbar's down here now. We can add and remove items to this. So, for example, it's really helpful, in my opinion, to add the CPU temperature. You can add that. That'll be at the bottom, and if we want to, you can see it just popped up down here on the right. Move it up, over there. You can move it down, wherever you like it. I'm going to play around with that a little bit later off the camera, but I'd like to show you also, let's see, one more thing. if we want to change the size of our screen, we tried to do that with the boots config file. I think it works a little bit differently on the Raspberry Pi 4 than it does the 3. But if we want to change the size of the screen, the configuration here, we're going to go to Preferences, Screen Configuration, right-click on this, and I want a resolution of 1280 by 720. I think that's just the easiest way to do work on these smaller screens with the Raspberry Pi. It's going to ask us if we want to keep that. Yeah, and I think that looks a little bit nicer. And we're done. Okay. Back to the internet here. When I first started out, I was really frustrated because I could not figure out how to download software on the Pi. Nobody seems to think that this is something that should be clearly explained to anybody. The people who use Linux, they already know how to use Linux. They're not tuned to speaking to the rest of us. So I found this thing, the Kamal Mostafa repository. And it sounds like this fellow was very kind and he made this repository. Unfortunately, it does not, when I used it last, it does not have the most up-to-date version of FLDIGI that includes the FSQ mode that I want. So this is a no-go. Now there's also this plan from KM4ACK. That's Jason on YouTube. He's one of the titans of YouTube, ham radio, and he's got a lot of great videos. So this will work. You got to start out with the FLRIG video. You'll have to just Google that. It takes a long time to set it up because he's compiling the latest screaming version of FLDIGI on the Raspberry Pi itself. Like all of that compiling is occurring on your computer. And that works. It just takes forever. But this will work if you need the latest screaming version of FLDIGI. I don't. I just need a version new enough that it has FSQ. And so luckily there is a much, much easier way to do this. So all we have to do, if you've gone through those other plans, you're going to laugh along with me. Preferences, add and remove software. How dumb is that? I did not know about that. It took me so long to find it, but all we have to do now, because the Raspberry Pi is hooked up to the Wi-Fi here, not my computer, the Raspberry Pi is, so I can still search for software, FLDIGI. Look at that. It's going to pop right up here after it's done querying, and we'll see a number of the things that we need. And if you go back to our checklist, I've got a list of some good software that I think you should download now while you have the internet connection. FLDIGI, FLMSG, FLAMP, FLRIG. You may not need FLRIG if you're doing just VHF dumb radios like I'm doing, but if you intend to perhaps potentially hook this up to an HF radio with CAT control, you'll need FLRIG. JS8 call, Xscreensaver. Whether or not you want a screensaver, download this because it can be used to shut off a screensaver if you for some reason want to do that. And then the best mapping software I've found is Viking. So we're going to go through the process to download all of these right now. And when I typed in FLDIGI, I believe it brought up a number of the other ones. So we've got FLDIGI, FLRIG. Why not FLWRAP? I don't use that, but we can give it a try. It even brought up JS8 call for us. All right, so we've got a number of them right here. Let's go ahead and apply. It's going to ask for a password, and then it will just download it, and it's going to work great. I'm going to pause here, enter my password. Okay, I entered my password, and it's just going to download them. That's all there is to it. It's so easy. And this is going to give us the FLDIGI version 4.1.18. I think they're up to like 4.1.28 or something like that now, but that doesn't matter. I don't need the latest, greatest version. I just need a version that works. So after a little bit, we'll move on to the next package, and we might not even have to put in our password again. There we go. So I also wanted FLAMP. Let's see if that's on there. It may have already downloaded with the FLDIGI package, or it might have shown up separately, and it sure did. It's separate. Let's just click that and apply. And I think it's been a short enough duration of time it didn't need our password again. Very good. And we've already got JS8, and I think we'll need Viking. Come along now. Let's see if just simply the word Viking works for us. Viking GPS Data Analyzer Viewer. Yep, perfect. Click that. Might be a bit bigger of a program. Viking is a complicated mapping program to use, but once you get it down, once you take the time to read through their help file, it's one of the best. You can get topo maps, you can get satellite view maps, and this can all be on your HDMI monitor that you put in your car if you choose to do that. Make a little mobile data computer setup like we use in the public safety world. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of this. Pause. That's done. Woo, that was a lot quicker for you than me. All right, and the last one will be Xscreensaver. This is just a screensaver program. Has a lot of fun screensavers. I like to download all the ones I can. But it'll also allow you to shut off the screensaver. If you don't want the screen to ever shut off, for example, if you're using it purely through the off-grid wireless access point, you may want to shut the screensaver off because Raspberry Pi comes with just a blank screensaver that shuts off, I don't know, after 10 minutes or something. So we're going to download the daemon front end, and then there's a lot of other modules. So let's just go down the list, and we'll get a big variety of screensavers. It's really fun. Let your kids pick through them, pick you out a screensaver. Blue Screen of Death one is hilarious, but maybe not so kid-friendly. I don't download the Dizzy one, and I think that is it. Let's apply. And we'll pause so you don't have to sit through this like I am. Looks like we're all done now. We can just click OK and get out of here. Now, all of your programs will appear here. Your ham radio program's there. I believe your screensaver program will be here. In fact, let's just go ahead and click that now because it's a lot of fun. Oh no. Sometimes you have to reboot the computer. There we go. Yeah, we'll launch. Whatever. Just get out of my face. Okay, see, there's a fun one. I think there's kind of a fun one called Peepers here. Let's see. It's a lot less dirtier than it sounds. There we go. Eyeballs. How fun is that? Okay, if you wanted to shut it off or do only one screensaver, you can do that. We just want the Peeper screensaver. That's the only one we want. If you want to shut it off, you can do disable screensaver. There we go. It will not turn on. At least I don't want it to turn on during this video anyway. So let's go ahead and just close that. And now it's all activated. We don't have to reboot or anything. It may be a good idea to reboot, but we can just continue going without rebooting right now. Now, let's go back to our checklist. And there's a couple things that we can't, at least I don't know, how to download through the add and remove programs. If you want to add some Bluetooth capability, let's just copy this and we'll open up a terminal window and we'll install it that way. Now, the Pi 2, you would need to use a USB adapter, but I've had some problems with that. I have not spent the time to really troubleshoot those out, but I think this is kind of a good reason to not go with the Pi 2. It's just a problem to get around all this stuff if you want to add things like Bluetooth capability. So let's go back here and we'll open up a terminal window. That's this button down here. This is what you use to set up the off-grid access point if you didn't want to SSH in through another computer. You would have just plugged it into your HDMI monitor and used the keyboard and mouse. But anyway, so I've got the terminal window open. I'm going to right-click and paste what I just put in. And this is an install command. Remember that sudo that's telling it I'm commanding you with the top-level admin privileges to download. I'm using the apt package to install Bluetooth, Pi-Bluetooth, Blues, and Blueman. This is a great package that will download a lot of useful programs for Bluetooth. And it asks if I want to continue. Yes. There's a way to bypass that, but we're not going to do that now. It's not important. We're going to keep it simple. Done. All right. Let's see what else there is here. Let's come back here now that the Bluetooth software has been installed, and we've got some instructions here. This is if you want a program like FLDIGI to start automatically on boot. And we'll do that. We're going to skip that for now. We'll come back to it later. The sound card configuration is what we'll do next. So we're going to make sure that it hasn't been set up. We've already got it plugged in. It's not going to be selected as our main speaker. We don't want our ringtones and stuff to come over the Digirig, only digital radio signals. So we're going to right-click on the speaker button and see what is. And yeah, it actually automatically defaulted that Digirig to be our speakers. We don't want that. I'm going to select the HDMI. If you had an AV jack speaker plugged in, you would select that there. If you have a second USB sound card for audio alerts, you would select that there as well. But we just want to make sure it is not selected as the Digirig. So next step, we're going to open that command terminal. Looks like we already got that open, and we'll type sudo alsa mixer. This is a sound mixing program that's really important on the Pi. So I'll paste that right in. Okay, we'll use F6 to select which sound card we want to talk to because it is selected as the AV port right now. This is what the AV port is called, BCM2835. We'll come back to that in a moment. All right, F6. and we're going to scroll down to our USB audio device. This is our Digirig. Okay, a couple things we want to do. Do you see up here where it says dB gain? This is actually dampening that sound, and I don't need that now. I can always come back to that later, but I'm going to use the up arrow to bring that as close to 0 as it'll go. And then the mic, which I don't want the mic muted. You see how here it says MM? This is muted. So I'm going to press M on my keyboard. You could also click with your mouse, but M on the keyboard works fine to switch that. All right, and it's set at -7. I don't need it at -7. I need it at like 0. There we go. Okay, and arrow key over to automatic gain control. This is going to cause lots and lots of problems if you don't mute it. We'll use the M button to mute it. Now F5 brings up an extra little slider, but it doesn't tell you that there up here in the right hand corner, does it? All right, we'll go over to that. And it says mic dB gain, and I'm not exactly sure what this does, but let's just go ahead and play it safe and put that to 0. All right, so we'll go back through and just double check. This is speaker says dB gain 0, mic dB gain 0, whatever this is, dB gain 0, and we know this is muted. Okay, we can press escape to exit. There is another command now. Again, this may be voodoo and I'm not sure. We'll want to go sudo alsa control store right here. I'm not an IT professional, and I'm so sorry if this is an unnecessary step, but it seems to work better this way. Okay, those settings are now stored. I had to log off real quick and connect to the internet because the next steps I have already posted on the Digirig forum, so I just put a link to that here in the Pi checklist. So over here, we are going to force the sound card order. Here's the problem that this solves. Whenever the Raspberry Pi boots up, it just kind of puts the sound cards in whatever order they load in. And we can check that load order by typing aplay-l. Okay, here they are. So it has the AV jack, the headphone jack here is number 1, the Digirig is number 2, and then the HDMI ports as 3 and 4. Sometimes this gets scrambled, and then it's going to cause problems. And when you go to transmit, it'll blast all those digital signal sounds over your speakers, your HDMI speaker or whatever, instead of putting it to your radio. So we're going to force that order. So let's go back to this on the Digirig forum, and we'll copy. Notice here we've got the word sudo and then nano, that's that text editor for code, and then a whole string of words after that. Paste that in. Okay, there's a couple things I want to use the comment feature to make disappear. So this thing that messes with USB audio, we're going to type a # in there to make the computer ignore it. Then we're going to use the arrow key to go all the way to the bottom, and I've got some stuff you can just paste right in. Copy that and paste. Cool. Now the next step, we'll hit Control X, then punch Y, and then Enter to save all that. Control X, Y, and Enter. So remember, initially the AV jack booted first, and then the Digirig. In here in the sound card settings, we've forced it now so that the Digirig will load first and then the AV jack afterwards, and then the HDMI ports will just fall in line after that. So we'll type sudo reboot, we'll come back and we'll see what that looks like on that A playlist. Okay, when we rebooted the Pi, it stopped outputting the off-grid wireless access point, and that's normal and good. But we are going to have to go back and connect again. Okay, we're now off the internet and onto the Wi-Fi hotspot that's outputted by the Pi. We'll log in, and we'll open a terminal window, and we'll type aplay-l, and we'll see if the sound card's booted in the order we want. And there we go. The USB sound card, the Digirig, loaded as card 0, the headphones loaded as card 1, essentially first and second place, and then the HDMI ports fell in line after that. Okay, now down here it says there's updates available since we last updated everything. So why don't we just go ahead and sudo apt update. Should be pretty quick. then we'll sudo apt upgrade. So anytime you see this icon, just get in your terminal and type sudo apt update and then sudo apt upgrade, or I believe you can even just double click on that and install. But we are now done. Join me in the next episode of the terminal element when we'll continue our Raspberry Pi setup.